9. Alpine plane wreck. In August of 2022, just weeks before the bodies of 2 missing hikers were found in the Swiss Alps, the wreckage of a plane that crashed over the Aletsch Glacier in 1968 reappeared. Mountain guide Dominic Nellen discovered it while trekking one of his regular routes. He told Sky News that at first he thought he saw 2 backpacks lying in the snow. As he got closer, he spotted the seats, wings, and mangled metal of the small Piper Cherokee aircraft. There were personal belongings scattered around the wreck, including an eyeglass case, a container of Nivea cream, and a red hat. Nellen was astonished by the perfectly preserved scene, which appeared frozen in time after crashing more than a half-century ago. Sadly, all 3 people on board, a teacher, a chief medical officer, and his son, died in the accident. Their bodies were recovered from the site shortly after the crash, but authorities said they weren't able to remove the plane. Scientists have given different figures for how fast the Alpine glaciers are melting, but most experts seem to agree that it's occurring at an unprecedented rate. 2022 was their worst summer yet, as record-high temperatures ravaged Europe, resulting in a 6.2% ice loss among Switzerland's glaciers. It might not sound like a lot, but in scientific terms, it's been described as extreme. And it explains why long-lost relics are reappearing for the first time in decades. 8. Zombie viruses. As rising temperatures melt the Arctic permafrost, viruses that have laid dormant for tens of thousands of years are starting to thaw out. Scientists have become increasingly concerned that this could lead to ancient pathogens coming back to life and infecting modern-day life forms. In recent years, environmental virologist Jean-Michel Claverie set out to find some of these so-called zombie viruses in permafrost samples taken from various locations throughout Siberia. He revived a 30,000-year-old virus in 2014, and in 2015, he and a team brought several other strains of ancient viruses back to life. The reincarnated viruses are large enough to be seen under a regular microscope, and they only target single-celled amoebas rather than humans or animals. So far, Claverie has discovered 7 previously unknown families of viruses. According to CNN, the oldest among them dates back roughly 48,500 years and was extracted from a permafrost sample taken from an underground lake, 52 feet, 16 meters below the surface. The youngest samples were from around 27,000 years ago and were found in a frozen woolly mammoth's coat and stomach contents. While none of the pathogens Claverie and his team experimented with are dangerous to humans or animals, there are many other types of viruses frozen in the permafrost, and it's possible that some of them could be infectious to modern-day creatures. He hopes that his work demonstrates the potential invisible dangers that may come with the continued melting of the world's permafrost. 7. A trove of precious gems. Located along the French-Italian border, Mont Blanc is the highest peak in the Alps and in Western Europe. It's also home to 2 Air India plane wrecks that crashed in 1950 and 1966. All 48 people on board died in the first disaster, known as Air India Flight 245, when a Lockheed Constellation aircraft called the Malabar Princess crashed into the mountain at 15,344 feet, 4,677 meters, during a bad storm. The second disaster, Air India Flight 101, involved a Boeing 707 named the Kangchenjunga. It crashed just a few hundred feet away from the Malabar Princess, killing all 117 souls aboard. Since then, mountain climbers have found plenty of debris, as well as personal items and human remains. But the most exciting discovery came in 2013, when an outdoorsman came across a trove of emeralds, rubies, and sapphires that crashed with the Kangchenjunga in 1966. Worth nearly $169,000, the precious gems became visible as the glacier they were embedded in melted. The finder kept the discovery a secret for 8 years before finally coming forward to authorities, which is required under law. After failing to find the owner of the gems, the local council kept half, and gave half to the mountaineer who discovered them. 6. C-53 plane wreck. In a harrowing brush with death, a United States Army C-53 transport plane named the Dakota made an emergency landing in the Alps during turbulent weather in 1946, while carrying 12 military officers and their families. The aircraft was en route from Munich, Germany to Marseille in southern France, when the captain found himself with no choice but to try safely landing in the mountainous terrain to avoid crashing into it. As it approached its landing site, the plane narrowly avoided a 250-foot wide, 76.2 meters crevice that was 50 feet deep, 15.2 meters. It touched down on the Gauli Glacier at 170 miles per hour, 274 kilometers per hour, and slid to a stop. It's almost unheard of in aviation history for people to survive these types of landing conditions. Miraculously, everyone emerged from the wreck with relatively minor injuries. As they awaited rescue at 11,000 feet, 3,353 meters, they burned wooden parts of the airplane to stay warm and survived on a handful of chocolate bars. 5 days after the crash, a plane fitted with skis landed on the mountain and picked the survivors up, 2 at a time, until everyone was rescued. According to the New York Times, it was the first time the Swiss Air Force had ever used planes in a mountain rescue. Over the following years, the sliding glacier pushed the wreck about 2 miles, 3.2 kilometers from its original site, and encased it in ice and snow. People have occasionally come across parts of the plane over the last 2 decades or so. But in 2022, glacial melting exposed more of the aircraft than at any previous point in the last 70 years. At least one wing was visible, along with canned food, clothing hangers, and other items from the cabin. The Swiss Air Force reportedly plans to retrieve parts of the wreckage, and archaeologists will select pieces to put on public display. 5. An ancient flying reptile. Around 76 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, a flying reptile with a 16-foot, 4.9 meters wingspan soared through the skies of what is now Western Canada. At the time, the region's climate was temperate and conditions were warmer and wetter than they are today. Dubbed Cryodraken boreas, or frozen dragon of the north winds, the species was a member of the earliest clade of flying vertebrates, known as pterosaurs. This large group of flying creatures consisted of dozens of species who were the first to take to the skies after insects. Pterosaurs ranged in size from being as small as a paperclip to having a wingspan of almost 33 feet, 10 meters, which means that Cryodraken wasn't the largest among its relatives, but it was far from being the smallest. The species was one of the 2 known members of the Osdarkid group of pterosaurs that existed in North America. In the words of National Geographic, Osdarkids were mostly head and neck. Cryodraken's existence is only known by a partial fossil, which was dug up in central Alberta in 1992. But for a long time, scientists believed it belonged to a different pterosaur species. After taking a closer look, they concluded in a 2019 study that it was a previously unknown creature. Do you think it's possible that in the near future, an ancient virus could be released from melting permafrost and wreak havoc on humanity? Let us know your thoughts down below. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. 4. Missing hikers. Since 1925, around 300 people have gone missing in the Alps. As the region's glaciers melt, the remains of some of these individuals are turning up. While scaling Switzerland's Chesgen Glacier in 2022, a pair of French mountain climbers came across a human skeleton. Alpinist Dario Adinmatin told The Guardian that the remains were found near an old trail that fell out of use around a decade ago, and that the hikers who discovered it were likely using an outdated map. Because the body was almost entirely reduced to bone, Adinmatin believes the person died during the 1970s or 80s. A week before the discovery, a pair of hikers found another human body while scaling the Stockji Glacier in Zermatt. One of the hikers told the newspaper Blick that the deceased individual was wearing neon 80s-style clothing. The body was also described as mummified and nearly complete, with only slight damage. German media speculated that the corpse found on the Stockji Glacier may belong to Karl Ure von Haub, a supermarket chain millionaire who held triple American, Russian, and German citizenship. He vanished in the area in 2018 while training for a skiing tour, but the hiker's description of the body's clothing style suggests that the remains may be much older. The mystery was finally solved after DNA analysis was carried out on the body, identifying it as a German hiker who went missing in 1990. It's unclear whether authorities managed to identify the remains found on the Chestgen Glacier, though. And these are just two of a growing number of bodies that have been found in recent years. 3. Baby woolly mammoth. A miner named Travis Mudry was cutting away at a permafrost wall in Canada's Yukon Territory in 2022 when a chunk of the material fell off the wall. In the pile of frozen earth, he saw what he first thought was the frozen carcass of a baby buffalo, but then he noticed that the animal had a trunk and realized it was a woolly mammoth. He alerted his boss, Brian McCann, who could immediately tell based on the creature's remarkably preserved state that they'd come across something of extreme importance. McCann immediately stopped all work at the site and began contacting experts with photos of the discovery. Yukon government paleontologist Grant Zazula received the message, but was too far away to be of any help. So he sent two colleagues who raced against the clock to retrieve the mummified mammoth before the summer weather caused any damage to it. They got there right in the nick of time and gathered the creature shortly before a storm that would have washed it away. Elders from the Trondek-Hwekin First Nation came by to bless the female mammoth, who they named Nun-cho-ga, or Big Baby Animal. Scientists speculated that she was around a month old when she died, at least 30,000 years ago. They believe she wandered off from her mother and got stuck in the mud. Nun-cho-ga was the first complete baby mammoth ever found in North America, and the second in the world. And incredibly, she may be in better condition than the other one. At the time of the discovery, researchers and First Nation leaders were collaborating to determine the next steps, with the goal of moving forward in a way that honors Trondek-Hwekin traditions, but allows for scientific study if possible. 2. World War II rescue plane. While searching over Greenland's southeastern coast for a downed 7-member U.S. Army Air Force crew in 1942, Lieutenant John Pritchard Jr. and radioman Benjamin Bottoms landed their single-engine Grumman Duck aircraft in a remote location on the ice cap. They rescued 2 survivors and got them to safety, but encountered whiteout conditions and crashed after picking up a 3rd survivor, resulting in the death of everyone on board. In 2013, more than 70 years later, an expedition team located the wreck with the help of radar and metal detection equipment. Nearly 40 feet, 12.2 meters beneath the surface of the ice, the devices detected black cables resembling the aircraft's wiring. Using a camera scope, the team captured footage of other aircraft components. The discovery came after nearly 3 years of research among scientists and explorers from the U.S. Coast Guard and the aircraft recovery group North-South Polar Inc., which has participated in the discovery of numerous historic military wrecks. Built in the mid-1930s, the J2F-4 Grumman Duck amphibious biplane was used by all branches of the U.S. military throughout World War II as a utility transport and for air-sea rescue duties. It was also used for mapping, observation, anti-submarine patrol, photographic surveys, and target pulling missions. Measuring just 34 feet, 10.4 meters long, and with a limited fuel capacity, the small aircraft was unable to make transatlantic flights. Instead, it went to places it could reach by making several shorter flights. Given its size and inability to insert itself directly into the fighting overseas, it's easy to overlook the importance of the duck, but it played an integral role in the war, especially when it came to rescuing stranded survivors. 1. Prehistoric bear. In 2020, reindeer hunters discovered the frozen carcass of an ancient bear on the island north of Russian mainland called Bolshoy Yakovsky. The creature's fur, nails, claws, teeth, and insides were surprisingly intact for what scientists originally thought was an extinct cave bear, dating back to somewhere between 22,000 and 39,000 years ago. They later discovered that the bear wasn't nearly as old as they first believed. And it's not a cave bear, it's a 3,500-year-old brown bear. While it didn't offer researchers a glimpse into the Ice Age like they'd originally hoped, it can still offer some valuable insight into the past. So they performed a necropsy and extracted some samples for further study. The team determined that the bear was a female who stood at 5.1 feet, 1.6 meters tall, and weighed around 172 pounds, 78 kilograms. Her cause of death is unclear, but she had spinal injuries. Because of how well preserved she was, even her stomach contents were still intact, showing that she ate a bird and some plants shortly before she died. Her presence on Bolshoi Lyakovsky presents another question: how she got to the island. Today, the landmass is roughly 30 miles, 48.3 kilometers from the Russian mainland. It may have been connected to the continent when the bear was alive, or she may have swam or walked across frozen sea ice. But the truth is, nobody really knows for sure how she ended up there. If you could find anything you wanted frozen in ice, what would it be? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.